know there ain't no stopping us. Fly without a boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I'll be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. Looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I'd be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast. Didn't even get to glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't. Shining like it's neon. Rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
Okay, hello you guys. I have everything so all over my desk it's hard to see if I am in frame. I will count on comments to let me know if I am not. And I'm not so sure I got this mic in the right spot. You'll have to let me know. Anyway, I wasn't planning on doing anything tonight. As you see, it's late. Don't normally like to do things terribly late, but I also figured out that you gotta, strike while the iron is hot. And that comment from John Brennan, boy, that just really led into continuing the insurrection discussion, hasn't it? I would like to refer you all, and when I upload this on YouTube without the countdown timer, if I can figure out how to do those little cards in the upper whatever corner, I will put a link to the show I did that discussed the meaning of the Libertarian Pledge and how we have pledged not to conduct violent, almost said resurrection again, violent insurrection against the government. That is something the Libertarian Party is absolutely opposed to. But let's now just get into some clips that I had to talk about. And I've got a few Dave Smith ones. I don't like that. That's too bright. I'm messing with some lights here. And the clips from John Brennan. The Dave Smith ones relate, even though they're not about, they're older. They happened before John Brennan's comments on MSNBC. And the Get Ready With Me portion, since it's 11:30 at night, I'm obviously not putting on a full face of makeup or anything like that. Today, we're going to be doing some nails because I am traveling out to Arizona tomorrow and I don't want to be nail shamed for skanky nails, so I might as well do them now, right? Why not? So let's go to the first clip. And again, this is going to be Dave Smith, and you'll see the camera hopefully switch where I'll be doing my nails.
They'll say something like, they go, okay, well, we direct incitement to violence is what we're trying to, deal with here. That's what that's the charges are. The impeachment charge, the article of impeachment that Nancy Pelosi wants to push is incitement of insurrection and all of this stuff. And, the issue that you have with that is that this becomes, it's kind of like hate speech. How exactly do you apply this? Now, you could think of an example of something that is clearly hate speech, right? But then you go like, okay, but are we applying this equally across the board? Like, what exactly is the threshold? It all becomes very vague in practice. And so, look, Donald Trump, and look, we were criticizing him for this on the last episode. There is no question that if what Donald Trump was telling his supporters is true, then that could lead to what we saw at the Capitol building. And in fact, from my perspective, and I think a lot of people's perspective, if you're being honest, if what he was saying is true, it would almost justify, not even almost, it would justify. I mean, if the government was stealing an election away from the rightly elected president and giving it to someone else, and it's this huge conspiracy, well, then, okay, then they're not the ones trying to install a dictator. The state is installing a dictator, right?
Okay. So what I'm doing with my nails is I'm picking out some tips. I want to make them a little longer. But that is exactly right. That is kind of just recapping what we had been talking about, that I just don't see enough libertarians talking about. And I'm not necessarily talking about Libertarian Party libertarians, just libertarian-minded people in general, where they look with shock and horror on this insurrection. I put it in quotes because that was not an insurrection. Believe me, if you guys thought that was an insurrection, you're going to be in for one hell of a surprise if you ever saw an actual one. And you'd be wishing for that. That is like, what's that children's game with all the candy canes, that's on the board? That's what that was. Real insurrection is hell unleashed on earth. Not a guy wearing buffalo horns, stealing AOC shoes and taking a selfie. I mean, really? Have we really gotten so fat and lazy that we think that is an insurrection? But go back to what Dave said and what I'd been saying. With all the shock and horror, we're going to pretend like this was an insurrection. It wasn't. Are you saying that insurrection is never justified? And if it was true, what they believed, would that not be a valid justification? I'm not arguing about whether it's true. They believed it was. So that's still a discussion I haven't really seen happen much. Okay, let's continue, and I'm going to continue picking out some nail tips.
So it's not that there's nothing to that. It's just that then you go, well, okay, so if the standard is, because Donald Trump didn't say violently storm the Capitol, he didn't like directly tell them to do this. He kind of, he said the word peaceful, but he did say, let's go to the Capitol building and let our voices be heard or something like that. There's enough of slippery area there where it's hard to exactly say what's what. But if you're going to say that, hey, he said something that ended up leading to violence, and so that's that, it's like, okay, but then what else do we consider incitements to violence? I mean, how about framing the president for treason for 3 years? Is that not, I mean, if the president was guilty of colluding with a hostile foreign power, that might make it justified to use some violence too. And actually, there was quite a bit of violence in that name. How about someone like AOC or something like that saying that cops are out here, you know, gunning down black people for sport? I mean, that certainly led to a lot of the Black Lives Matter Antifa violence over the summer, but I didn't see anybody connecting those dots, and none of us were even really calling for them to connect those dots.
Okay. I'm looking at the sizes. There's little sizes on the top of these things. That is a very interesting point, because you might know that I made the point in answering the question, did Trump incite insurrection, with a soft yes. With a soft yes, but also with the caveat that should that be not allowed? I mean, hard yeses are when you tell people to go out and commit violence. He never did that. But what he did do is give them a justification to commit violence. And is that something that we really think should be illegal? Now, I do think in his case, it's different than these cases of which Dave Smith was talking about. Though I think he makes a very good point. You know, when you have Maxine Waters openly telling people to harass people on the streets, that could easily break out into violence. And the other examples he gave. But I will think there's a difference with the president. Out of all the people in the country, the president is in the position to know things that no one else or very few other people would know. He's arguably the most powerful man on earth. And when the most powerful man on earth tells you something is a fact, you can't really independently fact check it very well, because he's going to be somebody who's going to have information you don't have. The same will be true, though, of senators and congresspeople, but not to the same extent as the president. But I do believe his point is very, very well taken. Why are we not drawing up all of these Democrat politicians also on incitement? That was actual, not insurrection, but actual violent property damage of a large scale. Good question. Food for thought.
On the silencing side, imagine going back to the founding of this country and the writing the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution or any of that other stuff. When they invented freedom of speech, the fact that that can lead to an insurrection is kind of the point. Like, if someone were to stand there and go, hey, if there's freedom of speech, people might be able to, that's the whole point, is that if you're tyrannical, people will have the ability to call you out, assemble, and overthrow it. That's why it's there. That is the point of it. Like, I'm saying that's the ultimate end of this thing, is that you can criticize government. That's why it exists. That's why we have guns, on the same note. And so the idea that, hey, people might be able to no, that's the point. That's why it's there.
Right.
Okay, that is fascinating. I played that clip before, and I think I'm going to play it again later on this segment, because it's going to lead to something. And it's very interesting, because that is the whole purpose. Not the entire purpose, but let's say it is a primary purpose of the First and Second Amendments, to be able to commit insurrection. Our Constitution gives us that right and power. So to be very upset that people are using their speech to rile up people against the government kind of misses the whole point. And I do see a couple comments on chat after the... We will get to those comments. I just want to get through these clips first, because then it will all tie together. And I'm pretty sure I do repeat this one clip. And if you're wondering what I'm doing with the nail stuff, for you men who don't know, when you buy nail tips and things like that, they come in multiple sizes, because not every hand is the same. And I like just pulling out the ones I know fit me and throwing out the ones that don't, so I don't have to do this each time. And this is a new little packet, so I'm kind of sorting through and getting rid of the ones that don't fit me. But let's go to the next clip.
No, you're absolutely right. And also, I would think that any fucking, not even just libertarians, particularly libertarians, but any just like decent, thoughtful person would realize that if you're gonna say the standard is like, well, Donald Trump accused them of lying or stealing the election, and therefore that was kind of justifying violence. Like, oh, okay, but what if I accuse them of lying us into the war in Iraq? Like, if I just talk about that, am I guilty now if someone goes and tries to do something violent about that? It's like, I don't know. I'm just telling the truth. So, like, well, I'm not telling anybody to go violently,
Right.
attack
When
the
you
government.
say taxation is theft, does that mean I can go kill a cop today? I didn't say
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, we're not advocating any type of violence. We're just telling the truth.
Okay, I loved that last point because it reminds me of a debate I got into a long time ago. Well, haven't been a libertarian that long, but for a long time ago in my libertarian time, it was I was fairly new, and I was talking with somebody on my old theology forum, which was Theology Web, and we did have political discussions there. And we were having a one-on-one discussion about taxation, theft, and things like that. And this person had said to me, well, if taxation is theft, then you are inherently saying that if somebody were to, conduct violence against the government tax collectors, that it would be justified. And in fact, this is what he said. This isn't my argument. And in fact, it almost would be mandated. And of course, I balked at that for several reasons. One, I'm a pacifist. And two, that is not what we are saying. But at the time, I really didn't know how to answer it. And he left that debate kind of smugly, saying, you don't really believe what you're saying, or you would be willing to taste your own wares, as he put it. Now, just because something might in fact be justified in isolation does not mean it's justified in the entire context of things. I do refer back to that video I did on the meaning of our pledge. It is absolutely impossible to conduct an insurrection or any kind of violent uprising against the government without committing aggression, because it simply cannot be contained. Once that genie is out of the bottle, it wreaks havoc, and it wreaks havoc on people who don't deserve it. So we choose to do the political route. If someone wants to concoct in their own head that they think that they can go shoot a tax collector or something, that is nothing that we advocate. And it is not the logical consequence of saying taxation is theft, because we don't live in a pure world. Crimes often require as I said before, a mens rea, a state of mind, an intent, a knowing intent that you know what you're doing is wrong. We've been so conditioned that very few people think taxation is wrong. They might think we're taxed too much, but very few of them get to the fundamental idea that taxation itself is wrong. Is there indeed the mens rea there? But that statement really did give me pause, because if I'm going to say that in some sense, a soft yes, that Trump incited violence, is there some sense in which libertarians saying taxation is theft, or any of the other predations of the state, which are in fact true? I see I got a Twitter notification on my screen. Interesting. Are we soft inciting violence? So you have to take messages in their whole context. And in their whole context, no, of course we are not. And that's where I would differentiate from what Trump said. Because I think in his whole context, in fact, in whole context, he was. When you're alleging that the very system is corrupt, and you're the president, the person who would be in a position to know, that there is a bit of a difference there. Now notice, I still haven't said that I thought what he said or did should be illegal or punished or anything like that. But just trying to examine the whole incitement and insurrection idea. I think we need to be really careful. As he pointed out, that charge can be turned against us, can't it? And that's going to become very relevant soon, isn't it?
So now your whole argument is going to hinge on, but Donald Trump wasn't telling the truth. It's like, okay, but as I was arguing with David Cross at the Paley Center, who determines what's the truth and what's a lie? I mean, like, okay, so now, like, you know, there certainly would have been a time where people would have said, no, they're not lying us into the war in Iraq. You know, so would that have been considered a lie at the time, even though it's not? Like, this is, you get into a very dangerous ground on very thin ice very quickly. And I just don't see how anyone could look at this and not be creeped the fuck out.
Oh, I'm creeped the fuck out. But I wouldn't dismiss as quickly as Dave did the idea of, oh, but he wasn't telling the truth. I mean, we can't be solipsistic, you know, that we just can't know the truth, that one man's truth is not another man's truth. I think the fact of whether or not he believed what he was saying was true in a reasonable sense is in fact relevant. And who determines the truth? Well, I mean, if you reduce that down, then we can't be sure of anything, can we? I mean, do you then prosecute for murder? I mean, who is telling the truth? I don't think you can be that hyper skeptical. But I also don't think you can put the fact finding in the hands of some elite few, as we've seen happen on Facebook and things like that. But I do think we as a people and the courts have to take into consideration whether or not the person believed what they were saying was true. I mean, even though I'm not a fan of, as I'd gotten into before, libel or slander or defamation laws, we even factor that in, don't we? That truth is an ultimate defense to any of those charges if those charges are to exist. So let's continue.
And by the way, speaking to being creeped the fuck out, this is the Democrats being in power and actually exerting power. Like, I mean, Trump didn't try and deplatform entire networks of Democrats to ensure that he can remain in charge. And the way that you do that is to say, well, they're dangerous. They can't be there. There's, you know, they might get violent. They might, all these claims, which could have easily been made, as you pointed out, with the protests and riots. Trump wouldn't even thought to do that. And this is like day one for Democrats. This is day one. Biden's not even in office yet. They're going for it.
Okay, well, I don't agree with him that Trump wouldn't have even have thought to do that. He would have. I mean, it's not beneath him. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't make it that, oh, it was just so unthinkable for Trump to do that, just for whatever reason that isn't a route he took. But other than that, the point is very well taken. We're starting to see the brown shirts and the jack boots before Biden is even sworn in. I think this is going to be a real terrible year. Term, 4 years for libertarians. And I'm not so sure we're going to have the backbone to face it as libertarians. I had hoped that the silver lining of getting somebody who's much more far left than I'm ever comfortable with in office is that we would finally stop flirting so much with the left and maybe get back to being libertarian. I would do everything I could to keep us from swinging right in reaction. But I think we're going to actually kiss more leftist ass because we're going to be scared. We're going to want to conform. We're not going to want to be that scary people, those scary people. And I think we're already seeing the writing on the wall on that. I can tell you I'm not going to be that way. But I'm kind of worried for the future of the party a bit on this. It used to be when we had a leftist president, we swang right. And when we had a right president, we swang left. Now, I don't like that cycle, but it's something understandable and something you can live with, and on total, it all balances out. But I think that cycle is broken here, and rather than being broken in the positive way of us swinging just libertarian, I think we're going to swing even further left. I really fear for that, for the party. That might have been the... Yep, because I see my Congress shall establish thing here. So I think that was it for those Dave Smith clips. So let me just move this out of the way here a second, and let's do some comments, if you will. I've got really limited space here, if you're wondering why it takes me so long to get to the comments and why I'm like looking around things. It is an obstacle course. And hello, Julian. You know I always love seeing you here. You're like my #1 regular, I think. So let's get David Johnson. He always is very insightful up here. David Johnson says, Insurrection is by definition, and it's funny, I have something's covering you here. Let me move this. Okay. Insurrection is by definition not allowed by the state because it by definition circumvents due process. The cost of even a justified insurrection via seeking legal recourse is that you are deciding to violate the law. But are you really? See, this is, I think, the inherent contradiction in the American experience. We were formed by I keep saying resurrection, insurrection. So are we saying that we were not lawfully, well, and it depends on how you use law. I mean, we obviously were not formed according to the laws of Britain, but do we answer to a greater law, the natural law, the law of what's actually right and wrong, rather than a man-made law? But the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence gives us the right to insurrection. That's what the First and Second Amendments are for. So I think there is an inherent schizophrenia in our country to have anti-insurrection crackdowns or even anti-insurrection laws, while that's what we are founded on and it is embedded in our Constitution. One could say you're only violating the law if you were wrong. I know history is sometimes written by the victors, but I think that is a very strange tension. And Pledge Defiance says you should go on Dave's podcast sometime. I would love to, but I haven't yet been invited. So from your keyboard to God's ears. If I'm ever invited, I would love to. I think we'd have some very interesting discussions, and it wouldn't necessarily be a love fest. I do disagree on some things, but we mostly agree, and we are both anarchists, so that is a definite common ground. And David Johnson says it would be awesome if libertarians en masse turned ourselves in as an activism campaign, confessed to being libertarians, and then said what we believe. Non-aggression, personal freedom. That would be kind of excellent, wouldn't it be? That would be a great mass protest movement. I agree with you. That would be a great civil statement. I wouldn't even necessarily call it civil disobedience because we wouldn't be disobeying anything, but we would be making a statement. So I do have up here on the screen something from the Constitution which talks about our freedom of speech. Now, I know some will say it only says here the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances, but it doesn't limit our speech just to that. It just says we do have the right to attempt the peaceful route, which is what libertarians do, but the Second Amendment is in there to secure the first and to keep our right to, let's see. I think right here in the Declaration of Independence, where it talks about the right to establish new governance as men see fit that will best guard their liberty. This is the foundational philosophy of our country. But yet we have laws against our own philosophy. I just find that irreconcilable. And in that, I think, like many philosophies, that the American experiment, because it was founded on an insurrection that we are quite proud of, that very fact may have sowed within America itself the seeds of her own destruction. I don't know. But it is, again, an interesting thing to ponder. I wanted to pull up here. This is the United States Code against insurrection. I got to lean forward here to read it. I forgot to bring my little hard copy because there's something here that I want to point out and perhaps discuss. Oh my God, my old eyes aren't seeing that. I want to see if I can actually read this puppy. I'm going to take my camera off so you don't see me leaning forward here. Whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto. And then it goes on to say. Now, what's interesting here, and because this is so tiny, y'all will have to tell me if I missed something. I don't think I did. It doesn't. I mean, one could say that the word insurrection in of itself, we could pull it up on dictionary.com, implies violence. But, I mean, does it necessarily imply... Whoops, I don't want you to... Well, why not? We can do my nails while I'm talking. Does it necessarily imply violence? I mean, rebellion, is that always violent? Because that statute, if we go back to the first page there, really just talks about rebellion. You know, you incite, you set on foot, you engage in rebellion or insurrection against the authority or the laws. Is that necessarily violent? Are we, I mean, there's a lot of us rebel against laws. A lot of libertarians rebel against laws purposely and do incite and encourage and set on foot other people to do so. But is that what this means? I don't know. The vagueness of it and the potential abuse of that really concerns me. I think we have a moral obligation to disobey unjust laws, to rebel, as it were, against unjust laws. So is this, in saying that, am I guilty of this code here, despite the fact that I'm a pacifist and I wouldn't, kill a cockroach? I don't know. Something to think about. I think it's a very scary law and something that I don't really think should exist.
I was thinking today that this is the most relaxed I've been.
Okay, sorry, I want to intro that for a minute. Coming up here is now John Brennan with his scary statement. I think he made it yesterday.
John Brennan was confirmed to be the next head of the CIA.
What? I messed up. Sorry. Here we go.
This is the most relaxed I've been in the course of many inaugurations I've watched because I'm not responsible for it. But I can tell you that when I was in the government, I had white knuckles because of the nature of the threats. But it's so much more difficult today because of what we have seen, not just over the last 2 weeks, but that certainly has riveted our attention. But because of this growth in polarization in the United States and domestic violence in white supremacist groups. So I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians. And unfortunately, I think there has been this momentum that has been generated as a result of, unfortunately, the demagogic rhetoric of people that just departed government, but also those who continue in the halls of Congress. And so I really do think that the law enforcement, Homeland Security, intelligence, and even the defense officials are doing everything possible to root out what seems to be a very, very serious and insidious threat to our democracy and our republic.
I want to read you a little bit of how...
Okay, that statement should chill you all to the bone. Oh my goodness, and the broadness of it. And what I just did with my nails, if you were curious, that first step was a dehydrator to get all the oils off, and the second step was a primer, which I need to now do on my right hand as well, even though I did it on my left. And libertarians, now, what is... We've been on the list of potential, quote-unquote, domestic terrorists for a while now. There was a memo from the Department of Homeland Security, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that listed libertarians and other anti-government types. Now, since that was a spoken statement, it's hard, you can't hear the capitalization, right? Did he just mean libertarians or libertarians? And the vagueness disturbs me. And I've seen it in print several times, and I suppose it's an editorial decision as to whether they'll capitalize it or not. And I've seen it both ways. Very, very interesting. But what's also interesting is what he didn't say. He went on about the polarization, then he went on to polarize. If you're going to list a list of people who have very recently committed violence, there's no libertarians in that list, buddy. There certainly are white supremacists and some of the other things he named. Nativists, certainly. But there were also minority groups engaging in violence. Now, you might think they were justified, but then we're getting into that whole, when is insurgency or insurrection justified? But he is perpetuating the very schisms that he claims to be railing against. Why are we so silent about the fact that private property, businesses, often black-owned businesses, were just completely decimated in riots? Yes, I know, the mostly peaceful. If a dish was mostly non-poisonous, the little bit that's poisonous will still kill you. Mostly peaceful is of no comfort to those whose lives were destroyed. As I said, it's like the Princess Bride, mostly dead. That is just rhetoric. That is not helpful. That does not deal with what is actually happened. And if you want to talk about inciting violence, perhaps the fact that the media has ignored the very real violence that had been going on in the midst of, yes, mostly peaceful protests, it might be what's inciting the other side. You can only ignore bad behavior so long before it encourages bad behavior in another sector. So I don't buy for a second. I think he's full of shit where he talks about being against divisiveness. He just engaged in that himself. But more towards our self-interest. We're going to be targeted, folks. We are going to be targeted. Will you have the backbone to remain anti-government? I already know for a fact I'm on the National Committee. I already have a file on me. It wouldn't surprise me if one day all of the members of the LNC ended up on a no-fly list for absolutely no reason. And there's no recourse to that shit. Count the cost. I think we're coming into a time of count the cost. I sure hope not. But this country is just getting more and more and more tyrannical. And I fear that there's going to be civil war. That's the last thing in the world anyone should want. It's funny, if any of you watch Gone with the Wind, right? If you remember when Scarlett O'Hara was sitting there on the front porch of Tara, and all the young men were all so excited about the potential of a civil war coming up. And she was like, fiddle-dee-dee, all this talk of war or whatever. And she's like, and there's not even going to be one. And they were shocked, They were just itching for this war. And then by the end of Gone with the Wind, you see what happened. Now, I know that was fiction, and I know it has its own problems, but the fact is, war is hell. You don't want civil war. But oh my God, what is our country turning to? There does come a point where you fight back or you're slaves. There does come a point where you say you'd rather live on your feet, die on your feet than live on your knees, right? That's it. Sorry. I always get things all twisted around. I just don't want us to come to that point again. I'm an avowed pacifist. I'd be probably one of the first to go. But I don't want to live in that dystopia anyway. But yeah, I think that's scary. Very, very scary. Good thing we have the pledge. All those people kept wanting to remove it over the years. I hope you see how short-sighted you were. But I don't think this is the time to be cowardly. I think it's the time to be even stronger, peaceful anti-government. But who is this John Brennan guy? Ex-CIA director, deep state, not a good person. Well, I don't think anyone could be a good person and be the head of those just absolutely evil agencies. But I assembled a couple clips. One of them shows some of his lies, and another his lukewarm well, it's his justification for torture, which he kind of mitigates in a way, but not really. It's politics speech. But this is the type of person we're dealing with. This guy has blood on his hands and on his soul, and he dares to impugn libertarians. That's all I have to say to him. Kiss my libertarian ass.
John Brennan was confirmed to be the next head of the CIA. Reignited debate, of course, about the use of drones.
3 months after 42 civilians died, John Brennan stood up and said,
there hasn't been a single collateral death.
Based on what Director Brennan has informed us, I have grave concerns that the CIA's search may well have violated Executive Order 12333, which prohibits the CIA from conducting domestic searches or surveillance.
As far as the allegations of CIA hacking into Senate computers, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, we wouldn't do that. If I did something wrong, I will go to the president, and he is the one who can ask me to stay or to go.
Okay, now, of course, that is older. It's because he's long since not been the director, but yeah, upstanding guy there. Upstanding guy. And, yeah, the Libertarian Party of Colorado put out a press release today, which I've seen on Facebook. I was kind of surprised that some people really didn't like it, and perhaps I'm just seeing it differently. The letter took him to task for his white supremacist comment and just saying, well, who's the white supremacist? Oh, that's, you don't go bombing primarily majority white countries, you go droning brown countries. And I think some people took offense, we were engaging in identity politics, but that isn't really, I thought the press release was wonderful because it showed the hypocrisy. It's like, yeah, you're so worried about white supremacy, huh? Who are these countries that you lied about droning? They didn't look too white to me. You protecting other white men? It's said to be in rhetorical fashion to make him look in the mirror. And next, here's the one where he's talking about torture. And with my nails, I'm gluing on tips. For some reason, my glue wasn't sticking. That's why I was wiping off some of that primer. I don't know what was going on with that. But here we go.
As to the issues on which we part ways with the committee, I have already stated that our reviews indicate that the detention and interrogation program produced useful intelligence that helped the United States thwart attack plans, capture terrorists, and save lives. But let me be clear. We have not concluded that it was the use of EITs within that program that allowed us to obtain useful information from detainees subjected to them.
Okay, put that on pause a second. A, because I know I'm going to get a copyright claim on this, but it doesn't matter. I'm not monetized, but I don't want them to yank it. And this, I need to make sure it's commentary. You notice how he admitted, and I like the way they cloak the horror of what they did by using, acronyms, EIT, give me a break, call torture what it is, torture. And he says, yeah, we used it, but we don't really know if it was effective. Well, if you don't really know it was effective, why? Not that I think it would ever be justified, but let's be consequentialists here for a moment. If you couldn't say it was effective, then why'd you use it? Well, because it might be? That's enough to torture human beings? Oh my goodness. But let's continue.
The cause and effect relationship between the use of EITs and useful information subsequently provided by the detainee is, in my view, unknowable. First question on bin Laden. It is our considered view that the detainees who were subjected to enhanced interrogation techniques provided information that was useful and was used in the ultimate operation to go against bin Laden. Again, intelligence information from the individuals who were subjected to EITs provided information that was used in that. Again, I am not going to attribute that to the use of the EITs, just going to state as a matter of fact the information that they provided was used. And so, yes, I've spoken to many of them, and there was strong concern. There are things that we do with our partner services under our authorities that we have covert action authorities, and covert is something that they were hoping that was going to remain such. But what I've told them is that it's important for our partnership to move forward and to strengthen in the years ahead because of the nature of the national security challenges we face. And so I am interested in making sure that we're able to do that.
Okay. And I'm almost done for tonight, so you guys won't see a completed project, but at least nails. I'm just going to be painting them red because I'm wearing red in Arizona, the lady in red. This guy is not a good guy. So EIT, what a quaint name for torture. Enhanced into, yeah. You know how sometimes some of the products we buy when they're trying to sell them to us, now enhanced, enhanced supplements. I don't think you expect enhanced to mean waterboarding or, any other kind of torture you could potentially think of. God, the way they use these terms to try to cloak what it is that they're actually doing. And if you cannot connect, again, pretending like we're consequentialists, better results with these enhanced interrogation techniques, then how the hell are you justifying using them? I don't think you could justify them no matter what information you got. But still, he couldn't even say if it was useful. All he could say is these people we questioned. We asked them nicely, we asked them maybe not nicely, and we also, we did that little thing called EIT, and yeah, we got information. Which of those techniques worked? I don't know, so let's just keep them all. Excuse me, asshole, if I care what you think about libertarians. You want to know who I think is the fucking terrorist? You. And, yeah, I'm going to pull up some more comments right now. I'm holding a nail tip on, so you got to give me a minute while it solidifies there. It's almost like super glue that you put on here. So let's go to comments. That went slipping a little. Okay. Let me see what I got going on here. Move these bottles. David Johnson says, unfortunately, the woman who was shot and killed on 1/6 had libertarian on her Twitter profile. Many of the Trump crowd also use that label. In light of that, how do we handle that basis for Brennan's claim? Is there a way the party can proactively protect our brand in the eyes of court so our members aren't vulnerable? Great question. And again, that's why I kind of said you couldn't hear you can't hear capital letters in a written quote. We do that. That's what the pledge is for. The pledge is a pledge not to violently overthrow the government. But I have to be clear, and a lot of people will disagree with me, that wasn't a frickin' insurrection on the Capitol, and that lady did not deserve to get shot. Disagree with me if you want. I think it's absolutely shitty what happened to her. And I don't consider her an insurrectionist, so the fact that she had libertarian on her Twitter profile, what I think happened there is it was just a protest that got out of hand. They freaking took selfies. That is not what insurrectionists do. So that was a shame. But a more pertinent example, though the context in which he claimed to be a libertarian is iffy. Turns out he mentioned the word libertarian in a in a discussion about vegetarianism. So I'm not even sure if he meant it politically at all. We're talking about Timothy McVeigh, who claimed to be a libertarian. But again, he used that in the context of a discussion about animal rights and vegetarianism. But we put out a statement after that saying, nope. You can find that statement on Elpedia. If you go to the page called The Libertarian Pledge, you will see our reaction to that. And again, the video, which I hope to be able to figure out to link up here somewhere, will deal with that. That's how we protect ourselves, and that's why we can never delete the pledge. And there's been so many moves to delete it. I hope we've learned our lesson. Oh my God. Okay, I shouldn't laugh. But you almost made me piss my pants. Electric Giraffe says it isn't violent insurrection. It's enhanced political engagement technique. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm going to snort. Oh, oof. I'm going to get a cramp. Oh my God. Oh, dude, you made my night. You win the internet for today. You definitely win the internet for today. Oh my goodness. Oh, Lord have mercy. Well, this is this label. This is what we have to look forward to, folks. This isn't going to calm down. And we're either going to remain firm in our principles, which are nonviolent. And I don't mean like there's a chance that we'd become violent. That's one thing which isn't going to happen. Libertarians are never going to become violent. That's not a worry of mine at all. But what I mean by remain firm in our principles is our anti-government principles, to remain firm in them, knowing that they are nonviolent, or we will be scared and we will censor ourselves and we will be cowed, because that has been the tool of the progressives. You know, they don't even need to get big tech to censor most people. We now self-censor. We self-censor even though we know what we might have been saying or thinking is perfectly innocent, but it could draw the ire of the political police. So we just don't say it. And as I've always said, when you remove words from men, all you leave them with is violence. Censorship is dangerous on so many levels. Censorship leads directly to violence because you can't suppress people for too long. Words are a steam outlet that lets pent up frustrations and even aggressions get out before violence is an inevitability. Okay, I think that's it for tonight, guys. I'm going to give you my little closing spiel, and if you sit through that, thank you, but otherwise, you have an awesome night, and I will see you soon. Okay, so I'm going to finish up my nails here, but this is the closing routine here. Please like, subscribe, share. You know what you hear from all of the YouTubers. And you can also support me. It would really, really make my day if you became a patron. And there is some patron-only content that we'll talk about. And in the show notes, you'll find all the other ways you can help or get in contact with me, including an Amazon affiliate link that if you do all your shopping starting from that link, I get credited and it costs you absolutely nothing. And as you see there, the lovely picture of Judge Gray, that is what we're doing right now as a bonus. We're going through that book. So if you would like to be part of that, please become a patron and you'll get access. Thank you so much. Have an awesome night.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.